Hi, I'm Tommy C, and I'm 47 years old. And if you can believe this, in just a couple days, I'll be 48. And that means in a little more than 2 years and a few days, I'll be 50. Can you tell? Well, let's be honest. Even though this channel's mostly YouTube drama, it's really all about gaming at the end of the day. Most of your famous YouTubers have a connection to gaming. I do as well. Keemstar, the guy that kind of brought me into this situation. Everybody's connected to gaming in some way, mostly video gaming. But there's the tabletop gaming and the magic gaming. You know? Dorks. And I know you guys like stories about it. But being 47 years old, it puts me in a really perfect position to talk about the Satanic Panic. I experienced it personally. I have an excellent incident. And I found a bunch of stories about people my age and older, mostly Gen Xers, that experience the Satanic Panic. And it's hysterical. And I think it's actually relevant for today and the other kooks. I dealt with kooks back then. I deal with kooks now. So buckle up. Let's go. Let's talk about the Satanic Panic here on Shot for the Point.
Hey man, you ever felt unstoppable?
Ask around. I'm not the guy you want to go toe-to-toe with. You're a bitch. Your friends are bitches.
Look, I know reaction content's like super duper lazy, but I enjoy it. I actually enjoy watching it depending on how it's done. And this is the best way to tell a story. I found this great channel called Crispy Tavern's D&D Tips and Stories. Wow, what a dork. Yeah, he's not like me, the super duper alpha hardcore military Iraq veteran. Well, it's pretty obvious I have a geeky side to me too. And let's be perfectly honest with you. Most of YouTube, everybody's connected to gaming at some point. Most creators are. They're connected to gaming at some point. It's cats and gaming made YouTube take off. And most of the people in commentary have a really deep connection to gaming, whether it be tabletop gaming like D&D or Magic the Gathering. God, what a loser you are if you played that. Or like me, lots and lots of video games. And I just started back on my World of Warcraft kick, which I usually do every expansion. Yeah, Mr. Alpha. I'm an alpha. I'm back in my guild. I'm with my guild. I'm playing with my guild mates. So I found this crispy video. No, D&D is Satan's game. You can't play it. Satanic Panic Karens, RPGR stories. This is definitely for me, and it didn't disappoint. So let's go over some of these stories. And I think I'm in a perfect position to do it, considering my age. Also, I think I'm actually changing things on Shot from the Point. I'm going to be doing more content like this and other types of content. Today it's reaction content. Tomorrow it could be a clip. It could be a video after that. You don't know. That's what I've decided to do. I'll be streaming pretty much for sure Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in between that, you'll get content. I'll try to get content out 5 days a week. If it's not a very special clip you might have missed on the podcast, because this channel is mostly a podcast. Let's be completely honest. And that's the way I roll. If something big breaks, then I'll break the system and I'll podcast back to back. But I think the break actually helps me make a better podcast, and I think it'll help me make better content too. So let's do it. Don't have to worry about lolcow anymore. Let's go over these Satanic Panic stories. They seem pretty hysterical. It's also bottom of the barrel content. It's reaction content, which should piss off Dark Viper, which always that makes me happy. So I got the headphones on. Let's go over this video. A lot of Satanic Panic stories. I'll be able to chime in with my own experiences. I'll tell you the authenticity and the accuracy of this stuff. And it's pretty accurate, I'm going to be honest with you. And yeah, let's go over it. Should be good. This guy seems like he's a first-class YouTuber, which means he probably screwed over a lot of his friends.
I was 12 when I first heard about Dungeons and Dragons. I saved up my money and got the little starter kit. My friend and I were working up characters, and we had a blast doing it. When a new story comes out about two kids playing D&D under a bridge and deciding to make a murder-suicide pact.
I remember this. I was really little when it happened, but I definitely remember this.
Apparently, heavy metal music was also involved.
Of course. Of course.
I swear I'm not making this up. My parents saw the news story and, knowing nothing about D&D, somehow concluded that D&D was at fault for their pact. Fast forward to my family meeting, and I'm being told that they wouldn't make me give up D&D, but they think I should strongly consider it?
I don't know if it's the times back then. I don't know what it was. But if I remember correctly about this particular stories, it was simply a murder-suicide pact between two people that were into heavy metal and play Dungeons and Dragons. That was it. And of course, your kids are never messed up. You're never terrible parents. Although I don't know, like I don't know if even being a terrible parent could create a scenario like that. If I also remember correctly, like one of these guys actually survived it. And severely damaged themselves. And I will say this, back then, you know, we had the 700 Club, the religious right, evangelical Christians were a lot more powerful, even though they're still pretty powerful politically than they are now. They definitely played a bigger role. And, you know, I grew up Catholic, which is probably... the group of people they hate the most. Yeah, I could have that's another video for another time. But it even but my mother's side of the family was half Catholic, half Lutheran. My experience is, at least the East Coast Catholics, they look at this stuff and kind of roll their eyes. They're not really they're not fundamentalists. They don't take the Bible literally. But like I said, my mother was kind of half and half, and she bought this like hook, line, and sinker. And if you looked into this story, and if I'm not mistaken, this particular story actually led into a lawsuit for Judas Priest, the rock band. And yeah, there was sort of this, you're getting the idea, the atmosphere around this stuff.
I gave up on D&D and earned their praise and $20 from my dad, the cost of the materials I lost. It was a hollow feeling, and to this day, I regret not standing up to them. It was buried in my childhood and left behind until, quite recently, I happened across D&D again and remembered how much I enjoyed it. I've taken it back up in spite of my age, 47, and it is everything I thought it would be when I was first starting out. I've since gotten into painting miniatures.
Well, you must be a dork. 47 years old, what's the matter with you?
And I hope to learn enough to DEM well in time. And, horror of horrors, I listen to heavy metal music. Please pray for me. Not much of a horror story, but I gamed throughout the Satanic Panic. I started playing D&D at age 14 in
Boy, you're old.
1979. My dad, who would often overreact, sat down and talked to me about it and deemed it harmless fun. But I had a buddy who was dating a girl from a very religious family. They refused to let her date him until their cop friend watched us play.
I mean, if I was a cop, hey, can you watch my kid play D&D so you can decide if this is morally correct? You know what I would have done? Like, why don't you watch it? Oh no, I'm a police officer of the law. I'll do it. I'm a hero. Can you imagine having to do that? God. You know, I grew up in a big shithole called New Jersey. I'm glad I didn't grow up in the Midwest and the South in the 80s. Talk about no fun.
So I ended up running a game of champions in 1983 for my group while a deputy sheriff we were all about to turn 17 or 18 and were surly about it. But you back your friends. The surprising thing was that the deputy was a woman in law enforcement in a rural town in the South.
Oh, in the South. Shocking. Never saw that coming.
South. She just sat politely through the whole game and just asked a few questions regarding rules and to understand who some of the NPCs were. When it was over, she looked at us and said it was obviously harmless. But she did point out that our first choice for solving a problem was violence. And
Like every movie, like, oh God, don't choose violence. Oh my God. Well, maybe we could talk to the kobolds and explain to them that why they don't need their candles. Oh my God. I mean, why aren't these people embarrassed? That's the thing that got me back then. Why aren't you embarrassed by your own behavior?
Yeah, we conceded the point. The girl ended up dumping my buddy in an ugly breakup. He was still heartbroken in the way only a teenager can be. We're all still pals, almost 40 years later. Not exactly a D&D story, but once upon a time, my hardline Christian dad found a CD pack of Might and Magic that I had borrowed.
Oh, so this would be 90s. Ooh, this is when I really came of age.
From one of my geeky buddies. A complete meltdown followed. I had to launch the game to demonstrate what kind of magic was taking place, and after a checkup of some fireballs and healing spells, I had to listen to a lecture about real-life magic and its supposed consequences.
No, you better don't show up your Ouija board. This was common stuff when I was a kid. You know, there was always like that one parent that was trying to save you from Satan. You don't actually believe in this stuff. I mean, I don't dump on religious people in the sense that, you know, you're certainly entitled to your beliefs, and, you know, it helps some people, gets them through the day, and it probably keeps order even to this day to some extent. I'm not getting into the details on that, but you know what I mean. But can you imagine coming to the conclusion that this game where you essentially pretend and the outcomes are decided by dice would actually be a tool by a great evil entity to control children and turn them against their parents? This was not an uncommon belief. You know, this idea that we're so much more advanced than people from the Middle Ages is ridiculous. It really is. It really is.
A note to fundamentalist parents. You're not making your children righteous. You're just making them really good at stealth, lying, and feigning obedience. Making great rogues by the sound of it. I have a tale from as late as 2012. And
Wow. 2000. I was over 30 at that time.
The reason I went for a really good while without tabletop games. I was in high school and had been playing for a good while up until this point. My friends enjoyed it, and we had a good, decent DM for a while. Now, I'm not a person who cares much for religion. Naturally, as such, I didn't even bother to ask anyone what their religions were. As it turns out, one of my players was slowly moving away from the religious practices of a rather uniquely conservative family of evangelical Christians.
I know what I'll do. I'm going to turn my back against God. I'm going to play D&D. You tell me that was definitely a rebel move. Definitely a rebel move.
To put things short.
By the way, I want to ask you, throughout the theme of this, and I'll get to this towards the end, I want you to ask yourself, what modern group of people are this annoying? I'll leave that to you. We'll get back to that later.
I managed to out his quote-unquote unholy practices to his parents, not knowing the ramifications this would bring. I have since been banned from speaking to him.
Good. You could have turned him into Satan. By the way, I did see this one other time in my adult life. It was Harry Potter. All these religious kooks saw these children getting in line to read a novel, and that pissed them off. I remember listening to some super evangelical radio station in New York City, and they were going over, you know, what school in Harry Potter was the bad one and the good one, and what did it really apply to Satan, and is Satan controlling these books? And they came up with no, but they also felt at the same time that Harry Potter could leave you to Satan if you weren't. If you started rooting for like the bad guys. Yeah, that's it. I'm not kidding. That would have been in about 2002.
And have not seen him in public since. My screw up had also caused the group to eventually fall apart. I have not seen nor spoken to that player since then. I had loved RPGs for most of my childhood and teens, but I'd only played video games due to lack of proper geeky friends. When I got to college, I ran to a guy in my sociology class who offered to put together a new campaign, and he invited me. I was still living in my parents' place and commuting to school, and the guy hosting the game was literally a 2-minute drive from their place. Same subdivision, no worries. It was an alright game, basically everything you'd expect with an experienced group of players bringing in a newbie. I played a ranger, had some laughs, and was looking forward to the next session. I get home and my mom asks me what I was doing with my new school friends.
I just started playing this dopey game with these dorky kids called D&D.
I told her we were just playing a game. I expected oh, that's nice, and nothing else. But then she specifically added, as long as it wasn't that Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I didn't
That's funny. What are the odds of that? And he's a grown man. He's in college. What group of people do you know today that shame grown men for their hobbies and opinions?
Exactly have a close relationship with my parents at that point, but I was also 19 and had been busting my hump at school for nearly a year while working as well. So I say, with all the casualness I can manage, that was exactly what we were playing.
Smart. No school for you.
My mother gets this concerned look on her face, and then she sits me down to have this serious conversation, talking to me the same way you talk to a small child, explaining in detail that I need to remember.
Don't worry, I'm 47. I still get talked to like that, so you're really not. It doesn't change. I got news for you. Hey, if anybody happens to be listening to this about 16, I can't wait till my older. People don't talk to me. Your parents are always going to talk to you that way. Promise.
Remember, it was all made up. For context, I'd been a published writer for a few years up until that point, and I'd been consuming fiction in all genres voraciously almost since I could walk. I was an honor roll student with a nearly full ride scholarship.
Oh my
I had no
God.
history of not being able to tell reality from make believe.
Yeah, you can. That's what they told me. Like they were like, Tommy, you gotta understand that stuff's not real. It's not real. Yeah, no shit. We have a paper and dice, a graph paper and dice. It's not real. You ever get these people that go like batshit over a video game or Dungeons and Dragons that something else would have done that either way? That's my opinion. Well, we covered a story yesterday in the after show about this kid that waxed his mom and wounded his father, shot them over Halo 3. Call me crazy. I think that something else would have probably came in and interfered with that disturbed person. I don't think it was Halo 3. I think it was the kid. By the way, religious family too, by the way.
My family wasn't a particularly religious household either, and both my parents are college educated. Guess the roots of the panic were real deep.
Well, the idea that educated people... First of all, educated people could be religious. Darwin was religious. A lot of people don't know that. He went to the Catholic Church the day he died. All right. But the idea that so-called smart people are college educated and they don't fall for this stuff, one thing has absolutely nothing to do with the other. People have spiritual beliefs no matter what their level of education is. The people who founded the United States were very well educated. Are you educated? Don't you know this is... No, that's not how it works. Because, again, I want to keep pushing this down the road. What group of people that sometimes are very well educated that are most annoying that sound like this today? You don't hear about this stuff as much as you did back in the 80s and even early 90s. But there's another group of people that are like this. They get very concerned.
I can remember the attitude in the 80s towards tabletop gaming. When I first got into D&D, my parents told me flat out that they had heard these games had taken over some people's lives, and if they saw the same thing happen to me, they were taking it away. I was lucky that they were open-minded enough to see that it wasn't...
To me, that group of parents is not too bad. They heard something, they don't know if it's true, they're concerned for their child. If I see something getting out of line, I'm going to intervene. That's actually decent parenting. All right? That's decent parenting. And you know what? You shouldn't just do that with D&D. You should do it with anything. Anything. Like if my kid got so into soccer and football, that's all he was talking about and screwing up, then you intervene. And soccer supposedly, and sports, that's the good things you can be into. You can't be into that too much. But yeah, you can overdo anything.
Inherently evil, and saw I was meeting good people through my gaming group.
Sure.
I also remember feeling like I had to keep the whole thing a secret through high school and college because of people's reactions.
College. I don't know. Like that's so weird to me. Like I was a rebellious teenager. I was standing up for my parents by the time I was 14. Took a few beatings, but we will take a beating. Ask Henry Hill. Know what he said? Everybody takes a beating. But it's just nobody. I guess I stood up a little early. I don't know.
I did have one person I knew tell me that they used to play D&D and enjoyed it, but gave up on it because it was satanic. It was kind of frightening because you never knew who, if they found out you played, would react well, would make fun of you if you're a geek, or think you were evil incarnate. The attitude today is so much better. The game itself has become much more mainstream and has affected so much of pop culture. I was floored when I found out that the husband of the priest at my mom's church freelances with Paizo. I'm a child of the 80s. My parents became born again in their mid-20s.
Lucky you. Lucky you.
With the help of a Pentecostal, speaking in tongues denomination, aunt.
Hey, imagine. They hold the snakes and start going, yabba, 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 yabba.
It was like the height of the satanic panic.
Yeah, I bet.
My dad burned all...
Here's what I know. I'm going to get away from Satan by holding snakes and babbling.
all of his records. I, at age 5 or 6, donated all of my satanic toys to the thrift store, specifically He-Man and Star Wars.
Good. They did you a favor.
Both emphasize using a power not from God. I wasn't allowed to watch
It's not a power. It's a, you know what it is, a power. It's a power not to get laid. I literally stopped playing D&D as soon as I had a girlfriend. That was like it. I don't think I've ever sat down and played another game again. Because I didn't want anybody to know in the 90s.
Thundercats or a lot of other
Well, you didn't miss anything with Thundercats. That show was terrible.
things. A lot of this stemmed from a book called Turmoil in the Toy Box. We stopped watching any fantasy.
Ugh.
My parents sort of apologized, and my mom bought me a bunch of He-Man toys at an antique store around when I was 18.
That's cute. Hey, like not too many people actually admit they fell under the spell of a moral panic. I'll like, you remember when you imagine that? It's like 7 years old, 10 years later. I'm sorry, I took your toys away. It was stupid for me to believe that toys have magical powers.
My dad became a pastor, and he has always been pretty open to sci-fi and pop culture, but still is uncomfortable with fantasy stuff. He definitely
That's so weird. That's so weird. Like this fantasy's okay and that fantasy's not. That's so bizarre.
believes in spiritual warfare and the end times. When I started playing D&D when I turned like 34, my mom asked if I was sure I wanted to invite it into my life. I said I was willing
Well, it's either this or the Ouija board.
to risk it. As a kid, though, I believed all of this, and it was really frightening. It basically gave credence to nightmares and caused me to have quite a bit more of them. I still make a lot of jokes about it in-game. This is how I play any zealous paladin or cleric. Not as an unrelenting crusader, but as a person who believed every irrational and convenient lie they were told.
That's cool. That's really being creative. That's really creative. Like, I remember my dad when I started bringing the books home, he started going through them, and my dad. It's come to think of it, my dad did check because I think he wanted to see. And my father's college educated too. He went to Old Dominion. He checked out. He looked at this stuff, and he was actually kind of impressed. He was like, I remember he said something. Are you going to put the work into this? Because this is a lot of work. I remember I had second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons book. This is and I never actually played it 100% probably to the T, an official way. I'll be honest with you. A lot of us just like when we couldn't figure out something in the book, we're like, you win. You killed the dragon. You killed the beast. But he said like this is. It's creative, and you're reading, and that was his big thing. And I remember when the when Harry Potter took off, my dad said the same thing. He watched all the Christian kooks are gonna wrap themselves around this, and sure enough, they did. It really is with the Christian kooks. They see kids getting into something that's relatively harmless, and they're like, why aren't they into Jesus like that? And the left wing kooks are like, we got to get into Dungeons and Dragons so we can force our politics around everybody's throat. You see what I'm getting at? You see? Yeah.
It also makes for easy growth arc that doesn't interfere with any main storyline. Everyone stayed away from her house. My buddy loved to play D&D on the down low with us, but his mother not only insisted her son would never play a game like that, she proudly declared she would burn any book she found.
So he got into heroin.
It was real hard to explain why he kept needing to hang out with us after school, and our reasons got increasingly bizarre.
That's a bro. He's covering for his bro. I like that guy.
Finally, she got suspicious and walked in on all of us playing at my house.
Jesus. Walked in, it's like he was masturbating or something.
We didn't lock our doors back then, you see. She lost it, gathered up my books, and threw them into my backyard. Then she spins around and starts demanding to know where our matches were. My dad finally comes out to see what the hell is going on. My friend's mother announces that she has caught us playing that demon game and she was going to burn all the books. Bad move. My father got me into D&D with a little computer game called Pool of Radiance in 1986. He immediately goes full drill sergeant mode on her, demands she march her ass off his property before he calls the cops, and tells her we're learning to smite evil, not hide from it. That last part was a fib.
Oh, boy. What?
But that's how my dad rolls.
Sounds like they're both crazy. Imagine being a drill sergeant to your wife. That must have been a loving marriage.
She was dumbfounded. Absolute silence resigned while she just retreated from our house. Months later, she still insisted she would burn any book.
I got to be honest with you. When I hear stuff like this, and again, I grew up in smelly old New Jersey. I am so glad I was born there. And I'm actually glad, even though I'm not a religious person, as you might be able to tell. I'm so glad if I had to be smited with religion, I'm glad it was Catholicism.
So she found them in her house, but she never stopped her son from coming over and playing with us. Man, the Satanic Panic is a real-life horror story that we have not yet covered on this channel to an extent.
So that's it. That's all I got. Those are some really funny stories. My story was similar. It actually had something to do with the guy who it was just a death pact. These kids were two disturbed kids, and if I remember, like one of them actually didn't check out. It was like suicide pact, and that got some major headlines. I think it happened in like 1984. I'm not 100% sure. And remember, I was born in 76, so I didn't really start playing until about 88, 89 with my buddy. And yeah, when she found that out, and my dad didn't go drill sergeant, but he did kind of intervene and tell him, no, this is, he's explaining to my mother, no, this is not the tool of the devil. And that's ridiculous because the devil doesn't use tools. And as I would grow up and figure out, there is no devil. That's what I figure out. So, yeah, I could connect with a lot of these. I think most of these stories are probably 100% real. The last one was a little with the drill sergeant thing. But, my dad did, like I said, my dad did an interview too. I mean, people are just so dramatic. It's ridiculous. But going back to what I said before, and I think you probably figured it out by now, you could take the word Satanism and replace it nowadays because we have not changed. It's just a different end of the spectrum. These annoying people that are completely ridiculous take the word Satanism and place it with a phobe or an ist. That's what they are. That's how I see the modern so-called culture war from the left. The woke, so to speak. I'm getting sick of using that word too, believe me. But it's politically expedient for this particular conversation. And yeah, those are like kind of the most annoying people I run into. And I don't find the fundamentalist Christians anywhere near as annoying. They're still annoying. And I still have this in the back. I mean, there was this thing, because I was really into heavy metal too. Like, you sort of rebelled against the Tipper Cores and these religious kook types back then. It was because they were annoying. Now we just have a new set of annoying people on a different end of the political spectrum. And they're all concerned and they're involved. The only difference is the woke, so to speak, they try to like get into your hobby and then change the content to better reflect their views, which is super annoying. Whereas the right, they just try to, you're not allowed to look at it. It's both pretty fascist, if you ask me. It's fascist behavior. But yeah, that's what I wanted to go over this. This guy has done a spectacular job in this video. I'll put the link in the description box below for some of his other videos, because you should do that when you react to other people's content, whether they get more views than you or not. So you can check it out. And I'm going to go play some WoW and eat my cat. Take care, everybody. Bye.
You're not into metal. You are not my friend. Heavy metal.